নমস্কার বন্ধুরা, আজকে মাসুমের নির্যাতন বিরোধী দিবসটিকে আমরা সপ্তাহব্যাপী যে পালন করছি তার ষষ্ঠ দিন। আজকে আমাদের কাছে বলবেন যে দুজন মানুষ। প্রথমে বলবেন রক্তাক্ত কাশ্মীর থেকে সাজিয়া আহাদ, যিনি গবেষণা করেছেন, মূল্যবান গ্রন্থ প্রকাশ করেছেন, অসম্ভব তথ্য সেখানে হাজির করতে পেরেছেন। ধন্যবাদ জেকেসিসিএসকে, সাজিয়াকে এবং তাদের বন্ধুদের। এই রকম অবস্থায় তাঁরা এই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ তথ্য তুলে ধরতে পেরেছেন বলে। এর সাথে বলবেন মার্টিন ম্যাকওয়ান, যিনি দলিত ফাউন্ডেশন, যে সংগঠন সারা ভারত জুড়ে দলিতদের হয়ে কাজ করেন, এবং এছাড়াও তিনি দলিত শক্তি কেন্দ্র আর একটি সংগঠন গড়ে তুলেছেন, এবং যারা খুব ভালোভাবে সারা ভারত জুড়ে আমাদের এই দলিত বলে যে মানুষদেরকে অচ্ছুত করে দূরে সরিয়ে রাখা হয়েছে, শুধু ক্ষমতা থেকে নয়, শিক্ষা থেকে, আলো থেকে যাদের পেছিয়ে দেওয়া হচ্ছে, সেই তাদের প্রবক্তা হিসেবে মিস্টার মার্টিন ম্যাকওয়ান তিনি বলবেন এখন। আশা করি আপনারা মন দিয়ে শুনবেন।
Jammu and Kashmir, which is one of the most densely militarized regions in the world, has seen unprecedented human rights violations since the onset of insurgency in 1989. The human rights violations include extrajudicial killings, sexual violence, enforced disappearances, massacres, use of excessive force, and torture. All these kinds of human rights violations continue till this date. On August 5, 2019, when the semi-autonomous status of Jammu and Kashmir was revoked by India unilaterally and unconstitutionally, Kashmir was subjected to one of the harshest crackdowns that the world has ever seen. There was a complete information and communication blockade during which mobile, landline and internet connections were barred. The information and the resulting communication blockade resulted in majority of the human rights violations that were taking place during that time not getting reported, because all kinds of movements of journalists, of anybody, were restricted. We at JKCCS were able to document a few cases of torture that happened during that time. One of the most some case of torture that we were able to document was of 3 men who were tortured in a village in Shopian district in southern Kashmir. These men were tortured in an army camp that is present at the periphery of their village. When these men were being tortured, the loudspeaker was turned on, the whole area heard their cries. And the purpose of this torture was not just to punish these 3 men, but it was to make an example out of these men and threaten the whole community, saying that this is what could happen to any one of them. This has been the historical purpose of using torture in Jammu and Kashmir by the Indian state. The primary purpose may be to punish that individual, but the larger and more pervasive purpose of using torture is to threaten and intimidate an entire population and make examples out of these individuals to make the entire population fall in line. JKCCS released a report in May 2019, which was based on the documentation and analysis of the cases of torture since 1990. The report was an attempt to highlight the use of torture in Jammu and Kashmir, which has been and continues to remain one of the most underreported human rights violations that happens in Kashmir. Torture is carried by the state forces with absolute legal, political, and moral impunity. Tens of thousands of Kashmiris have been subjected to various forms of torture since 1990s, and the victims include civilians and militants, men and women, minors and elderly. uh, Kashmiris have been subjected to different forms of torture, which have been set out in the United Nations Istanbul Protocol. Most of these people who are detained are subjected to multiple forms of torture, which include stripping them naked, electrocution, waterboarding, roller treatment, sleep deprivation, among many different forms of torture that are used here. As our analysis of the cases confirms, torture is an intrinsic and a routine part of state practice in Kashmir. Besides being a form of punishment or reprisal, torture has been routinely used. Uh, Torture has been routinely used to extract information and to force confessions from the detainees. Torture is so commonly and so routinely used in Kashmir that it became a tough decision for us to pull the plug on the field work and to actually start compiling the report, because so many torture cases would be reported regularly. Just when we had finished the final editing of our report, a custodial killing of Rizwan Pandit was reported from Air Cargo SOG camp in Srinagar. His body had visible torture marks, and after multiple protests, a probe was ordered into his killing. But like hundreds of probes ordered before this one, there has been no outcome of this probe, and of course there has been no prosecution, and nobody has been held accountable till date in his killing. Air Cargo, where Rizwan Pandit was killed, is one of the most notorious torture centers that has been functional in Kashmir for decades, and there are many such centers that are still functional in Kashmir. From Air Cargo, many other cases of custodial killings have been reported over the years. Some of the most notorious torture centers, similar to Air Cargo, have been converted into luxurious accommodations to ensure the removal of these names from the public memory. For example, Papa 2, which is one of the most dreaded torture centers from the 90s, was renovated and converted into the official residence of Jammu and Kashmir's last chief minister. And Hari Niwas, which is also one of the most notorious torture centers from 90s, was converted into a state guest house after renovation. Apart from these designated torture centers, every army or paramilitary camp has been a torture center, has been used as a torture center, and post 2016, even the police stations are used as torture centers frequently. Torture has often been correlated with the enforced disappearances and custodial killings. Riaz Ahmed Tikre, who was detained on 2nd September 2019 after a protest, was kept in illegal detention for 4 days in Kalamabad police station in Kupwara district. His family received his dead body after 4 days, and it was riddled with torture marks. The police came up with a theory that he committed suicide while he was in their custody, but neither his family nor anybody in his village, whom JKCCS researchers talked to, believed in this version of events that the police put forward. In August 2017, Manzoor Ahmed Khan and Nasrullah Khan were detained by the army in the Trahgaon village in Kupwara district. The army is camped just on the way to their village. According to statement by Nasrullah Khan, Manzoor was tortured, and Nasrullah heard his cries while he was being tortured in detention. Manzoor Ahmad Khan has been subjected to enforced disappearance since then. While Nasrullah was released in a half-dead condition, and he was treated for about a month in a tertiary care hospital in Srinagar, where he was diagnosed with rhabdomyolysis, a condition which he developed as a direct result of torture that he was subjected to. There have been multiple studies that have been published from Kashmir in the early 1990s by prominent nephrologists that prove a correlation of the development of acute renal failure to torture. Torture continues to be perpetrated unabated in Kashmir in the absence of any law criminalizing it. India has been a signatory to the United Nations Convention Against Torture since 1997, but till date it is yet to be ratified. The impacts of torture are intergenerational with regards to the socio-economic condition of the victim and his family. The young boys who are mostly the targets of torture post 2016 see their future prospects bleak, as they are often caught in the whirlpool of illegal or arbitrary detentions, torture, and continuous harassment and surveillance. To end torture, there is an urgent need of ratification of United Nations Convention Against Torture, criminalization of torture, ending the impunity, and bringing accountability.
আপনারা শুনতে পেলেন ভূস্বর্গ কাশ্মীর, তার কি অবস্থা। এটা কি জীবন? এই প্রশ্ন আজ ওঠা স্বাভাবিক। এটা কি মানুষের বাস করার জায়গা? এই প্রশ্ন ওঠা স্বাভাবিক। বাংলাদেশের এক কবি তিনি লিখে গেছেন বহুদিন আগে, অদ্ভুত আঁধার এক এসেছে এই পৃথিবীতে আজ, যারা অন্ধ সবচেয়ে বেশি আজ চোখে দেখে তারা। এই প্রশ্নের এই কবিতার পংক্তির আলোকেই আমরা এবার দেখব অন্য মানুষ যারা নামে ভারতীয়, যারা অচ্ছুত, যারা আমাদের হিন্দু বা মুসলমান, যাদের মধ্যে ভেদাভেদ তৈরি করে রেখেছে, বর্ণবাদ তৈরি করে রেখেছে, জাতিভেদ প্রথা তৈরি করে রেখেছে, সেই দলিত মানুষেরা আজ কি অবস্থায় আছে, নির্যাতন এবং দলিত, রাষ্ট্রীয় নির্যাতন এবং দলিত মানুষ, তার সেই ব্যাপারে বলবেন আমাদের বন্ধু মার্টিন ম্যাকওয়ান।
Friends, this is Martin McWan from Gujarat, and I have several organizations. I have been working on the question of caste atrocities, violence, untouchability for the last 40 years. And this is my talk today on the request of my friend Kirti Roy from Masum. It is his not work but the lifetime mission to address the whole question of torture. I admire his work, and that's why when he requested, I accepted to speak for the program. Now, I have not worked in depth like what Kirti has done on this subject, but definitely I can speak to all of you with my limited experience. Now, primarily when I think of torture, there are three things that come to our mind. One, torture happens because there is abusive positional power by the security forces. Number two, there is an abuse of the power by the state authorities for their sectarian political interests. And third, which is much more complex and deeper, is that the power of abuse is compounded by the prejudices that the enforcement agencies carry with them. Now, when this is compounded, it creates a cycle, a vicious cycle of abuse or torture, limited space for legal representation, and lastly, due to various limitations of the judicial systems, there is very little justice, and therefore we cannot create better environment or a deterrent environment where no torture happens. Now, this is the vicious cycle in which we have been struggling with. Let me elaborate this on a little. Let's take example, the topic which they have given me today to speak to all of you is torture and Dalits. Now, in Gujarat, Dalits are about 7% population, 7.01% population. But if you look at the figures of how many people which are there in the jails who are convicts, will be shocked to hear that it is a figure of 32.9%. Yes. And the under trials are about 23.4%. Now, a 7% population has a representation of almost 5 times bigger in the jails, which sends a signal that this is a criminal tribe. Now, what is it? Right? We have severe complaints in the country that the special legislation which has been enacted to address the whole question of caste-based violence, which we call the Prevention of Atrocities Act, it has a dismal rate of conviction, barely 5%. But when it comes to Dalits as victims or Dalits as aggressors, the conviction goes up to 32.9%, right? That means there is something more than the facts say. Now, this is not a typical story of Gujarat. You can look at the same figures for Assam, and you can look at the whole figures for the whole nation also. Well, whereas Dalits will have about 16.5% of the population, their representation into jails will be much higher. Now, this is happening also with the tribals, and also particularly with the Muslims, the religious minorities. So, on the economic side, we see that these are the most impoverished communities. They carry a historical burden of the injustice with them, and now in the democratic India or the independent India, when you have a full-fledged developed judicial system, you somehow end up in the jails, creating a perception that you are not the victims, you are the aggressors. Now, I will not hesitate to say, and it is not an exaggeration, but my little study that I have tells me that the kind of work that we did or our leaders did in the pre-independence colonial area where we were enslaved by the British, on the question of creating an environment where the abuses are addressed, that level of work we don't find now in independent India. We have complaints of the caste atrocities rising. We have complaints about the persecution of the minorities going up. We have complaints about the abuse of power by the security forces on the people, the human rights activists, going up. Now there is an organization called Evidence does remarkable work in Tamil Nadu, and which says that I think it was the year 2017, if I am not mistaken, in a single year 25 Dalit activists have been murdered in that state in a single year. Now that tells a lot. Right now we see that people who are working towards the promotion of the human rights are in the prisons, whether it is academic like Anand Teltumde or Sudat Bhardwaj or Gautam Navlakha and many others. And it's over 2 years that they are in the prison, and yet we don't see the light of the day when the matters are heard. There is no direct evidence against them for any wrongdoing, and yet they continue to be in the jails without bail. So now, how do we resolve this issue, right? And I would say that when two or three points that I think very important for me to highlight. When we speak of the torture, we basically emphasize on the physical injury that is caused to a person. We undermine sometimes the psychological trauma that is caused to the person and the family of the person. Apart from the abuse that the person goes through, if you push that person into the custody without bail, then the entire family suffers. The children suffer, the children's education suffer. Unfortunately, in our country, our data system is very poor. Even if you take a special legislation like Prevention of Atrocities Act, and you ask the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Commission about the latest figures that about the crimes that are happening, they will not be able to tell us. The figures come almost after a year and a half or 2 years after the year has been completed. So that means these reports are prepared very late. They are presented in the parliament very late when they are absolutely irrelevant, and nobody has time to remember those things. Yes. And therefore, the issue is not addressed politically at all. This is one question. Okay, when I say of the data, let's also be very clear about the authenticity of the data that we have. We have these precarious conditions of the manual scavengers in our country. Nobody knows how many scavengers are there in the country. Not even the commission which is a commission constituted on the to study the living condition of the manual scavengers. The commission will tell you that they learn about the violation of the law from the newspaper reports, right? So in absence of the data and in absence of the credible data, how do you resolve a political crisis which is pushing millions of people into severe human right abuse situation? Now, this is a very big challenge that we all face. But I would say something more to this is that apart from the question of data, that we must go into the root causes of the problem. So what is it that is creating the torture and the abuse and the violation of the human rights? Primarily Dalits. And I think the torture is only a manifestation, one of the manifestation of the deep divide that we have in the society, and as a result the inequity which is created. Let's take the recent example of the US after the gruesome murder of George Floyd. Yes, this is not a single incident that has happened there. In last 5 years there have been 5,000 deaths of the colored people at the hands of the police in last 5 years. Yeah, because there is a racial division which creates a social, economic and political inequity. And therefore the anger has come out, which does not want to regard the legal agencies. So whether you put the military police there or whether you make an appeal, people said no, nothing is going to work. Yes, we have to resolve our issues ourselves. And now this tension now is spreading to UK and France. Now our Indian society is characterized by the whole question of the caste hierarchy, division of the assets, whether it is land or investment for the industry by caste, and therefore most people who will end up as landed laborers, landless laborers, will be the Dalits and the tribals, and definitely you have a large section called the OBC. Now, what we are trying to address the issue is with some schemes which is very scanty financial resources. So, if you do not resolve this tension, the question of the inequity, then the end result, which we call the torture, is not going to come to an end. When was the last time that the Parliament called a special session to study and discuss the violation of the human rights, especially the torture that's happening around the country? This is not the question of one state, say West Bengal. Yeah? This is in Northeast, it's in Andhra Pradesh, it's in Madhya Pradesh, it's in Uttar Pradesh, it's in Bihar, it's in Jharkhand, it's in Chhattisgarh, it's in Gujarat. So countries of size like this, if you do not have a political environment where this is openly discussed and debated, right? The US has been doing it now. They are saying this is happening because we have a racial division which is creating the economic and political and social inequity. Why cannot India do this? Now look at this, a small incident that, which is right now preoccupying my mind is the statue of Manu which is standing in the premises of the Rajasthan High Court. It's not like the US and the UK where the statues were, Confederate statues were erected and constructed, before the independence came in, 300 years or 200 years ago. This statue of Manu was created and constructed in the High Court premises in 1989, yes, after 41 years of Indian independence, by lawyers, not by the state. And even when all the High Court judges resolved to remove the statue just because there's a stay order which is not being vacated for now almost 31 years, that the statue stands there, right? If it was on the public road, we'd have still understood, but right in the premises in front of the entry of the Rajasthan High Court. Now, this is the problem, that we have the prejudices in society which are strengthened in our children through a process of socialization, through religious instructions. Now we have one opportunity which before us, which you call the primary education, where these prejudices can be corrected. But look at our textbooks. Aren't there any prejudices based on caste, ethnicity, gender, or the religious persecution and the religious superiority in our textbooks? It is. How do we train our teachers? Yes, there are examples. I mean, in Navsajan we did one of the largest study to map untouchability practices. We examined 98 forms of discrimination, and mind me, it is not a small study. It covers 1,589 villages and 98,000 respondents. The largest practice that comes to your mind definitely is temple entry, where 90.2% of people cannot enter the temples, though they are Hindus by their faith. But the second most striking one is that in 54% of the government schools, Dalit children are queued separately during the midday meal. In Rajasthan, there are incidents where all the Dalit children have been rusticated from the schools because two children decided to drink water from the matka, which was also used by the principal. And they all happened to be Dalit children. In Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh, there have been several incidents where the teachers had to be put in behind the bars because they identified Dalit children to clean the toilets. We identified more than 2,500 children in a region called Saurashtra in Gujarat, where only children from the scavenging families were made to clean the washrooms and the toilets of the school. Now, what is the message that you are giving to a child when they are in primary education to get knowledge? There's an incident in Madhya Pradesh where in the midday meal there are 3 kitchens and 3 cooks. One for the scheduled castes and tribals, one for the OBCs, and one for the general class. Yes. So there are 3 chulas, cooking stoves, and 3 cooks and 3 queues. Yeah. This is the independent India, right? Unfortunately, we have not taken the question of primary education very seriously as a tool to correct the inequity which is in society, and therefore later on to address the question of the whole question of torture and abuses. Look at the whole question of land distribution, which is causing one of the major problems. Well, when I speak of the torture, one of the things that I want to emphasize, and this would be the last point, is that there is a hostile environment in the country for the people who work on the question of the human rights. And if the society does not respect the people who work for the promotion and protection of human rights, then the society is not going to be a safe place. Thank you so much, and all my best wishes for my friend Kirti Roy and his team, and Masoom. Thank you so much.